My aunt said, I deserve half of what she left you, so I reminded her she didn't visit Grandma once in 5 years. We were standing in Grandma's living room, surrounded by 47 years of memories. The lawyer had just read the will. Everything went to me. The house, the savings, the jewelry. Aunt Celeste's face turned the color of overripe tomatoes. That's not fair, she hissed. I'm her daughter. You're also the person who told her she was too much work, I said. I have the voicemails. See, when Grandma's dementia started getting bad, Aunt Celeste decided it was too inconvenient for her lifestyle. She lived 20 minutes away. I lived 3 states over and still showed up every weekend. I'd drive 6 hours on Friday nights, spend Saturday and Sunday with Grandma, then drive back for my Monday shift at the hospital. Aunt Celeste came to Christmas. Once, Mom, her sister, tried mediating. Maybe we could split things more evenly? No, I said. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing, because here's what they didn't know. During one of Grandma's clear moments, about 8 months before she died, she grabbed my hand with surprising strength. I'm changing my will, she whispered. Celeste thinks I don't remember her last visit, but I do. That visit happened 3 years ago. Aunt Celeste had brought her new boyfriend, trying to impress him with the family money. She'd asked Grandma right in front of him how much the house was worth. When Grandma couldn't remember, Aunt Celeste laughed, called her a vegetable, said maybe it was time to consider other living arrangements. I found Grandma crying in the bathroom an hour later. After that, I installed cameras, not to spy, but to protect her. The footage showed every missed holiday, every canceled visit, every excuse. Meanwhile, I was there for the doctor appointments, the medication changes, the 3 a.m. calls when she forgot where she was. This is elder abuse, Aunt Celeste announced, pulling out her phone. I'm calling my lawyer. Please do, I said, because I called mine 3 months ago. I'd suspected this would happen. Grandma had warned me. Celeste will fight you, she'd said during one of our last real conversations. She always does when money's involved. So I'd prepared. I had 5 years of medical records showing who attended her appointments, bank statements proving who paid for her care when Medicare didn't cover everything, and those security camera files showing 427 days where I was present and Aunt Celeste wasn't. You manipulated a sick old woman, Aunt Celeste spat. I loved her, I said quietly. There's a difference. That's when my cousin Devin walked in, Aunt Celeste's golden child, the one she actually bothered to raise properly. He looked at his mother, then at me, then at the papers scattered across Grandma's coffee table. Mom, he said slowly, when's the last time you actually saw Grandma? Aunt Celeste's face went white. Because I was here 2 weeks ago, Devin continued, and Grandma told me something interesting about her will, something about a second document. My stomach dropped. What second document? The lawyer asked, suddenly alert. Devin pulled a sealed envelope from his jacket. The one, he said, meeting my eyes, that she made me promise to open only if anyone contested the first will. The room went silent. Even the lawyer stopped shuffling papers. Devin turned the envelope over in his hands, and I could see Grandma's shaky handwriting across the seal. My name, Devin's name, and a date from 6 months ago. She called me on a Tuesday, Devin said, his voice steady. Said she needed a witness for something important. Someone from Celeste's side of the family, she specified. Someone who couldn't be accused of bias. Aunt Celeste's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I drove over that afternoon, Devin continued. Found her sitting at the kitchen table with her lawyer. She was having one of her clear days. Sharp as a tack, actually. She told me she was writing a letter. A letter that would only matter if her daughter challenged what she'd decided. He looked at his mother with something close to pity. She made me read it right there, Mom. Made sure I understood every word before I agreed to hold it. And then she made me promise on Dad's grave that I'd only open it publicly if you contested the will. That's coercion. Aunt Celeste's voice cracked. She was sick. Anything she wrote was witnessed by me, her lawyer, and her doctor. Devin interrupted. All of us ready to testify she was completely lucid that day. In fact, Dr. Patterson specifically noted her mental state in her medical records. I checked. The lawyer leaned forward. Mr. Devin, I'm going to need to see that letter. Of course. Devin broke the seal. The sound of tearing paper felt final somehow. He pulled out 3 handwritten pages, Grandma's careful cursive filling every line. She asked me to read it aloud if this moment came, so here we go. He cleared his throat. My dearest Celeste, he began. If you're hearing this, it means you've challenged my will. It means you've proven one final time that you value my money more than you ever valued me. I'm writing this on one of my good days, with witnesses present, so there can be no doubt about my soundness of mind. I want you to know exactly why I made the choices I did. Mom sank into Grandma's old armchair. Her face had gone pale. Devin continued reading. You were 4 years old when your father died. I remember holding you at the funeral, promising I'd take care of you always. And I kept that promise, Celeste. I worked 2 jobs to keep you in private school. I skipped meals so you could have dance lessons. I wore the same coat for 8 winters so you could have new clothes every season. Aunt Celeste's hands started shaking. You left for college and barely called. You graduated and moved across the country without a word. When you came back 5 years later, it was only because you needed money for your business. I gave you $50,000. You promised to pay it back. I'm still waiting. That was a gift, Aunt Celeste whispered. Let him finish, Mom said quietly. You married Raymond against my advice. I saw how he treated waitstaff, how he spoke about people he considered beneath him, but I kept my mouth shut because you were happy. When he left you 2 years later with nothing, who do you think paid your rent? Who covered your car payments? Who made sure Devin had a stable home when you were falling apart? Devin's voice caught slightly, but he kept reading. I never asked for gratitude. I just wanted my daughter back. But you were too proud to admit you needed me, and too ashamed to face what your life had become, so you stayed away. And the years passed, and I got older, and sicker, and you still stayed away. Aunt Celeste was crying now. ugly sobs that shook her whole body. But Devin didn't stop. When the dementia started, I was terrified. Not of forgetting, but of being forgotten, of becoming invisible while I was still alive. And that's exactly what happened with you, Celeste. You forgot me while I could still remember you. Do you know how that feels? To call your daughter 47 times in 1 month and get her voicemail every single time? To leave messages saying you're scared, you're confused, you need help, and never hear back? The lawyer was writing furiously. Mom had tears streaming down her face. Your sister tried. God knows Patricia tried to get you involved. She'd call you, text you, even show up at your house. You always had an excuse. Too busy with work, too stressed to handle sick people, too emotionally fragile to see your mother deteriorating, but not too busy to ask Patricia how much my estate was worth, not too stressed to inquire about selling the house while I was still living in it. I never said, Aunt Celeste started. There are text messages, I said softly. Mom showed me. Devin turned to the second page. But here's what you didn't know. While you were too busy for me, someone else wasn't. My granddaughter drove 6 hours every Friday night for 3 years. She gave up her weekends, her social life, her sleep. She held my hand during panic attacks. She cleaned me up when I had accidents. She sang the songs I taught her as a child when I couldn't remember my own name. I felt my own tears starting. She never complained, never asked for anything in return. She just loved me, Celeste, the way you used to love me when you were small, before money and pride and shame got in the way. She gave me something you couldn't buy with all your business success. She gave me dignity in my final years. The room was completely silent except for Aunt Celeste's crying. So when you contest this will, Celeste, understand what you're really fighting for. You're not fighting for fairness. You're fighting for the right to profit from a relationship you abandoned. You're demanding payment for a love you never gave, and I won't allow it, not even from my grave. Devin's hands trembled as he held the final page. I've left everything to my granddaughter because she earned it, not through manipulation or obligation, but through showing up, day after day, week after week, year after year. She was there when it cost her everything and gave her nothing. That's love, Celeste. That's what you forgot how to give. He looked up from the letter. There's more. Should I continue? The lawyer nodded. Please. To ensure there's no confusion about my mental state or intentions, I've arranged the following. First, video testimony recorded today with my lawyer, Dr. Patterson, and Devin as witnesses. Second, a detailed account of every missed visit, every unreturned call, every broken promise from the past 5 years. Third, documentation of every instance where my granddaughter stepped in to provide the care you should have given. Aunt Celeste's face was blotchy with tears and rage. You can't just... Fourth, Devin read louder. I've instructed my lawyer to pursue legal action if you contest this will, not just to defend the distribution of my assets, but to investigate whether you committed elder neglect under state law, because that's what it was, Celeste. Neglect. You knew I needed help and you chose not to give it. You knew I was vulnerable and you exploited that vulnerability for financial gain. The lawyer was nodding now. That's actually a very strong case under our state's elder protection statutes. Fifth, I've left explicit instructions that if you fight this, I want everything made public. Every voicemail you ignored, every text you dismissed, every time you chose convenience over your mother. I want the world to know exactly who you are, Celeste. Not the successful businesswoman you pretend to be, but the daughter who abandoned her mother when she needed her most. Mom stood up suddenly. Celeste, stop this. Please, just stop. But Aunt Celeste wasn't listening. This is character assassination. She was senile. She didn't know what she was writing. Devin carefully folded the letter. Actually, there's a postscript, written in a different color ink, added 2 weeks before she died during her last clear moment. He unfolded it again. P.S. I know you'll claim I wasn't in my right mind when I wrote this. So I'm adding this note today, 2 weeks before my death, with full knowledge of what I'm doing. I still remember everything, Celeste, and I still mean every word. You had 5 years to prove me wrong. You never did. I love you. I always will. But I don't trust you with my legacy, and I don't trust you to do right by the granddaughter who did right by me. So this is my final answer. This is my final choice. I'm sorry it had to end this way, but I'm not sorry for protecting the one person who protected me. With all my love and all my disappointment, Mom. The silence that followed was crushing. Aunt Celeste looked at her son with pure betrayal. You knew. This whole time you knew. Yeah, Mom, I knew. Devin's voice was gentle but firm. And I tried to warn you 3 times. I told you to visit her. I told you she was keeping track. I told you she was hurt. You said you'd deal with it after she died. After I got the inheritance, you mean? Aunt Celeste spat. You were supposed to be on my side. I'm on Grandma's side, Devin said quietly. I always have been. The lawyer stood, gathering papers. Mrs. Celeste, given this evidence, I strongly advise you to withdraw any contestation of the will. If you proceed, your mother's estate is prepared to file criminal elder neglect charges, pursue civil damages for emotional distress, and make public every piece of documentation mentioned in this letter. You're threatening me? I'm informing you of the consequences, the lawyer said calmly. Your mother made her wishes very clear. You can accept them gracefully or you can fight and lose everything, including your reputation. Aunt Celeste looked around the room wildly, searching for an ally. She found none. Even Mom wouldn't meet her eyes. This isn't over, she said, her voice venomous. You think you've won? You think some letter changes anything? It changes everything, I said. I'd been quiet through all of this, but now I stood. Because it's not about the money, Aunt Celeste. It never was. It's about knowing that Grandma saw exactly who you were, and she chose me anyway. Not because I manipulated her, not because I tricked her, but because when it mattered, I was there. And you weren't. She grabbed her purse, moving toward the door. Don't expect me at the funeral. I don't expect anything from you, I said. Grandma didn't either. Not anymore. She slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. One of Grandma and Aunt Celeste from years ago before everything went wrong. The glass cracked right down the middle. Devin picked it up carefully. "I'm sorry," he said to me. "For her, for all of this." "Don't be," I said. "You did the right thing, I know." He set the picture on the mantel. "Doesn't make it easier." Mom finally spoke. "I should have done more. Should have pushed harder. Made Celeste face what she was doing." "You did what you could," I told her. "You were there too. You helped." "Not like you," she said softly. "I helped because Celeste wouldn't. You helped because you loved her." The lawyer cleared his throat. "If we're finished here, I need to file some paperwork. The estate will be transferred within 30 days. All assets, all accounts, everything as specified in the original will." After he left, the three of us sat in Grandma's living room. The afternoon sun was coming through the windows the same way it had 1,000 times before. I could almost see Grandma in her chair, working on her crossword puzzles, humming old songs under her breath. "She used to make cookies every Sunday," Devin said suddenly. "When I was little, before Mom and Dad got divorced, she'd let me eat the dough and pretend not to notice." "Chocolate chip," I said, "with extra vanilla." "She made them for me too," Mom added. "When I was pregnant with you, said they'd help with morning sickness. They didn't, but I ate them anyway, because they reminded me of being young." We sat there, sharing memories. Devin told us about the time Grandma had taught him to ride a bike, running beside him for 3 hours straight until he got it. Mom talked about how Grandma had sewn her wedding dress by hand, working on it for 6 months. I described the last coherent conversation we'd had, where she told me stories about her own grandmother, linking us across generations. "What happens now?" Devin asked eventually. I looked around the room. "I don't know. Sell the house, probably. It's too big for just me. Put the money towards something Grandma would have wanted." "Like what?" "There's a program at the hospital," I said slowly, "for dementia patients who can't afford full-time care. They always need funding. I was thinking, maybe I could endow a wing, or sponsor care for people like Grandma who don't have anyone." Mom smiled. "She'd love that." "Yeah," Devin agreed. "She really would." We stayed until dark, sorting through papers and memories. When it was finally time to go, I locked the door knowing I'd be back tomorrow, and the day after. There was so much to go through, so many decisions to make. But for now, I just wanted to remember how it felt to be in this house with people who understood why it mattered. I drove home thinking about Grandma's letter, about how even in her confusion, she'd managed to see clearly the one thing that mattered. Love wasn't about money or inheritance or family obligation. It was about showing up. It was about being present even when it was hard. It was about holding someone's hand while they forgot everything except that they were loved. Aunt Celeste would never understand that, but Devin did. Mom did. And most importantly, Grandma had known I did. 3 weeks later, the estate transfer was complete. I became the owner of a house worth $340,000, savings accounts totaling $180,000, and jewelry appraised at $45,000. The total came to just over $500,000. I kept Grandma's wedding ring, donated half the jewelry to a women's shelter, sold the rest and put the money aside for Devin's kids' college funds, even though he protested. Grandma would want them taken care of, I told him. And you were there when it mattered too. The house sold in 2 weeks to a young family with 3 kids. They promised to take care of the garden Grandma had loved. I cried signing the papers. I took the money from the sale and the savings accounts and met with the hospital foundation. They were thrilled. Overwhelmed, actually. With a $400,000 donation, they could expand the dementia care program significantly, hire specialized nurses, and provide free services to families who couldn't afford help. They wanted to name the wing after Grandma. I said yes. The dedication ceremony was small. Just me, Mom, Devin, and a few of the nurses who'd helped care for Grandma during her final months. They unveiled a plaque, the Helen Crawford Memory Care Wing, dedicated to those who remember when others cannot. I stood there, reading her name over and over, and felt something settle in my chest. This was right. This was what Grandma had wanted. Not money sitting in accounts, not jewelry in a safety deposit box, but help for people who needed it. Care for those who couldn't care for themselves. Mom squeezed my hand. "She'd be so proud." "Yeah," I whispered. "I think she would." Devin had brought his kids, Grandma's great-grandchildren who barely remembered her. They were 5 and 7, too young to understand dementia or inheritance or family betrayal. They just knew great-grandma had made good cookies and now there was a special place at the hospital with her name. "Will we visit?" the older one asked. "Every year," I promised. "On her birthday. We'll come and see the wing and remember her." Later at dinner, Devin showed me his phone. "You need to see this." It was a Facebook post from Aunt Celeste. A long rambling thing about ungrateful relatives and stolen inheritances and elder abuse. She tagged me, Mom, Devin, and about 30 other people. The comments were mixed. Some of her friends offered sympathy, but others, people who'd actually known Grandma, were calling her out, asking why she'd never visited, pointing out that they'd seen me at the nursing home every week but never her, sharing their own stories of watching Celeste ignore her mother's calls. "She's making it worse," Devin said. "Every time she posts something, more people remember how it really was." "Let her," I said. Grandma wanted the truth out there. This is just helping that along. 2 of Aunt Celeste's business partners quietly ended their relationships with her firm. Apparently, someone who'd abandoned their elderly mother wasn't someone they wanted representing their company. Her church asked her to step down from the board. Her book club uninvited her. I didn't feel triumph, just sadness. All of this could have been avoided if she'd just visited, if she'd just cared, if she'd just been there, but she hadn't. And now everyone knew it. 6 months after Grandma's death, I got a letter from Aunt Celeste. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. I almost threw it away. Almost. But something made me open it. "Dear niece," it began. Not my name, just niece. I'm writing this because my therapist says I need closure. She says I need to acknowledge my role in what happened and make amends where possible. So here it is. I'm sorry, not for fighting the will. I still think that was justified. But for not being there when mom needed me, for making excuses, for letting my own issues get in the way of being a good daughter. I was angry at her for being sick, for not being the strong, capable mother I'd always known, for becoming someone I had to take care of instead of someone who took care of me. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. I couldn't handle watching her fade, so I didn't watch. I just looked away and pretended everything was fine. By the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late. She was gone, and you had everything. I convinced myself you'd manipulated her, that you'd taken advantage of her confusion. It was easier than admitting I'd failed, easier than facing that my own mother had chosen you over me for very good reasons. My therapist says I'm not entitled to your forgiveness. She says I need to accept the consequences of my choices and move forward, so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm selling my business, taking time off, figuring out who I want to be now that I can't pretend to be someone I'm not. I don't expect us to have a relationship. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that you were right about all of it. Mom knew exactly what she was doing, and she made the right choice. Take care of yourself, Celeste. I read it 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and didn't answer. Some things don't need a response. A year after Grandma died, the memory care wing had helped 47 families. 47 people got the care Grandma had needed, given by people who showed up and didn't look away. I visited on her birthday like I'd promised, brought flowers for the memorial garden they'd planted, sat on a bench with her name on it and told her about my year, about how I'd gotten a promotion at the hospital, about how Devon's kids were doing, about how Mom had started volunteering with dementia patients, finally processing her own guilt about not doing more, about how Aunt Celeste's letter sat in my desk drawer, unread most days, but there when I needed to remember that people could change, even if it was too late. I miss you, I said to the empty air. I wish you were here to see what we built, to know that your stubbornness and your clarity in those final moments mattered, that you protected not just me, but all these other people too. The wind picked up, rustling through the garden, and for just a moment I swear I could smell her perfume, that old lady scent of lavender and talcum powder and love. I sat there until the sun started to set, feeling the weight of the year settle around me, the fights and the tears and the anger, the grief that came in waves, the moments of peace when I remembered her laugh or her hands, or the way she'd hum while cooking. Life had moved on, as it does, but she remained, in the wing that bore her name, in the families getting help, in the lesson she'd taught me about showing up. I drove home as the sky turned purple, thinking about inheritance. Not the money kind, the real kind, the values passed down through generations, the choices we make that echo long after we're gone. Grandma had left me more than a house and savings. She'd left me an example of dignity, of clarity, of knowing your worth even when your mind was failing. I'd spent the money, sold the house, given away the jewelry. But what she'd really given me, the knowledge that love meant presence, that showing up was everything, that family was earned, not inherited, that I'd keep forever. And maybe that was the point. Maybe the will had never really been about the money. Maybe it had been one final lesson from a woman who knew exactly what mattered. Years later, when I had my own daughter, I'd bring her to the memory care wing on Grandma's birthday. I'd show her the plaque with the names she'd never known but would grow up hearing stories about. I'd tell her about the great-great-grandmother who taught me about love by giving me everything and nothing all at once. And when my daughter asked why great-great-grandma had left me the money instead of her own daughter, I'd tell her the truth. The same truth Grandma had written in her letter. She gave it to the person who showed up, I'd say. And that's the most important lesson of all. In life, you show up for the people you love. Not when it's convenient, not when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. That's what love is. That's what family should be. My daughter would nod, not fully understanding yet. But someday she would. Someday she'd face her own choices about who to show up for and who to walk away from. And maybe, just maybe, she'd remember her great-great-grandma Helen and choose presence over convenience. That was the real inheritance. Not money, not property, but the knowledge that love was a verb, not a noun. That family was something you did, not something you were. And in the end, that was worth more than any amount Grandma could have left in her will. But the story doesn't end there. Because 6 months after that first anniversary, Aunt Celeste showed up at my door. I almost didn't recognize her. She'd lost weight. Her hair was different. She looked smaller somehow, diminished in a way that had nothing to do with physical size. I know I have no right to be here, she said before I could speak. I know you probably don't want to see me, but I need to tell you something, and I need to do it in person. I should have closed the door. Should have told her we had nothing to talk about. But something in her eyes stopped me, a brokenness I'd never seen before. 5 minutes, I said, stepping aside. We sat in my living room, awkward and silent. She looked around at my apartment, taking in the photos on the wall. Me and Grandma at my college graduation. Me and Grandma at Christmas. Me and Grandma everywhere. I see her in your face, she said finally. The way you hold your mouth when you're thinking. She did that too. Why are you here, Aunt Celeste? She took a deep breath. I'm sick. Stage 4 lung cancer. Ironic, right? I never even smoked. Just bad luck, the doctors say. My stomach clenched. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm not here for sympathy. She pulled out a folder from her bag. I'm here because my lawyer is insisting I get my affairs in order, and because I don't want to die the way Mom died, with my child hating me for very good reasons. She handed me the folder. Inside was her will. I skimmed it quickly. Everything was going to Devon's kids with a substantial trust for dementia research in Grandma's name. I'm not leaving you anything, she said. You don't need my money, and you've made it clear you don't want anything from me, but I wanted you to see that I'm trying to do one thing right, to honor Mom in the only way I have left. I set the folder aside. What do you want from me? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She pressed her hands together. I've been in therapy for a year, dealing with my shit, as my therapist so elegantly puts it. And one of the things I've realized is that I spent my whole life being angry at Mom for not being perfect, for not being rich, for not giving me the life I thought I deserved. She laughed bitterly. I blamed her for my failed marriage, for my business struggles, for my own inadequacies as a mother. And when she got sick, it was easier to pretend she didn't exist than to face how much I'd failed her. Because if I acknowledged she needed help, I'd have to acknowledge I wasn't giving it. And that would mean admitting I was exactly the kind of person I'd always despised. Tears were streaming down her face now. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even think I deserve it. But I'm dying, and I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, what I destroyed, and I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. I'd imagined this moment dozens of times. Imagine telling her exactly how much she'd hurt Grandma. How many nights I'd held Grandma while she cried, asking why her daughter didn't love her anymore. How many times I'd wanted to scream at Aunt Celeste for being so selfish, so cruel, so absent. But sitting there watching this broken woman cry, I found I didn't want to say any of it. How long? I asked. 6 months, maybe less. Does Devin know? Yeah, he's been amazing, actually better than I deserve. He's moved back in to help with appointments and stuff. His wife is furious, but he says family takes care of family. She smiled sadly. I think he learned that from you. We sat in silence for a moment. I visited the memory care wing, she said finally, the one you funded. I talked to the nurses there. They told me about the families they've helped, the lives they've saved, the dignity they've preserved. She looked at me with something like wonder. You took Mom's money and turned it into something beautiful, something that would have made her proud. I would have just spent it on myself, on things that don't matter. You don't know that, I said, though we both knew it was true. I do, actually, because that's what I've always done. Taken and never given back. She stood slowly, like it hurt. Thank you for listening. I know it's more than I deserved. Aunt Celeste, I'm not asking for a relationship, she said quickly. I'm not even asking for forgiveness. I just needed you to know that in my final months, I finally understand what Mom was trying to teach me. That love is measured in presence, in showing up, in being there even when it's hard. She walked to the door, then turned back. When I die, Devin's handling everything. I've asked him to donate my body to science. No funeral, no service, just gone. I don't want people pretending they'll miss me when we all know the truth. That's not, it is though. I've burned every bridge, lost every friend, because I couldn't admit when I was wrong, couldn't apologize when I should have, couldn't show up when people needed me. She smiled faintly. But at least I'm finally honest about it. That's something, right? After she left, I sat for hours, thinking about grudges and forgiveness and what we owe people who've hurt us. I thought about Grandma's letter, about how even in her pain, she'd said she still loved Celeste, how love and disappointment could exist side by side, how you could recognize someone's failures and still wish things had been different. I thought about calling Mom, about telling her what happened, but instead, I just sat with it. The weight of knowing someone was dying and feeling complicated about it. Because that's the truth about family trauma. It's never clean, never simple. Even when someone's been terrible, even when they've earned their isolation, their suffering doesn't bring satisfaction. It just brings more sadness. 3 weeks later, Devin called. She's in the hospital. It's happening faster than they thought. She's asking for you. I know, he said. And I'm not asking you to come for her. I'm asking you to come for yourself, so you don't spend the rest of your life wondering if you should have. I drove to the hospital thinking about Grandma, about how I'd been there for every moment of her decline, how I'd held her hand through the fear and confusion, how I'd made sure she never died alone. Aunt Celeste had no right to expect the same. She'd made her choices, lived with her consequences. But still, she was in a private room, morphine drip keeping the pain at bay. Devin sat beside her, holding her hand. When he saw me, relief flooded his face. Hey, Mom, he said softly. Look who's here. Aunt Celeste's eyes opened. They were cloudy with drugs but still aware. You came. I came, I confirmed, pulling up a chair. I don't deserve, probably not, I agreed. But I'm not here because you deserve it. I'm here because I don't want to become you. She blinked, trying to process that. I watched you turn into someone bitter and alone, I continued. Someone so wrapped up in pride and hurt that you pushed away everyone who mattered. And I refused to let that be me. So I'm here. Not for you, for myself. She smiled weakly. Harsh, but fair. We sat there, the three of us, not talking much, just being present. Devin told stories about when he was young, when Aunt Celeste had been a better mother, before the divorce, before the resentment, before everything broke. I listened to stories about a woman I'd never known, one who'd sung lullabies and packed special lunches and showed up for school plays. It made her abandonment of Grandma somehow worse and more understandable all at once. People weren't simple. They were capable of great love and terrible neglect, sometimes toward the same people, sometimes in the same lifetime. As the sun set, Aunt Celeste's breathing changed, became labored. The monitors started beeping urgently. Nurses rushed in, then backed off when Devin shook his head. No extraordinary measures. She'd been clear about that. Mom, Devin said, voice breaking. It's okay. You can let go. Her eyes found mine. Tell her I'm sorry. When you see her again, tell Mom I'm sorry. I didn't believe in heaven or an afterlife, but I nodded anyway. I'll tell her. She died at 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, 63 years old, alone except for the son she'd managed not to completely destroy, and the niece she'd tried to rob. We sat with her body for a while, the way you do, saying goodbye to someone you had complicated feelings about. Thank you, Devin said finally, for coming, for staying. I did it for Grandma. I said. She would have wanted someone here, even for Celeste, even after everything. Yeah, he agreed. She would have. The funeral was exactly what she'd wanted. No service, no gathering, just a quiet cremation and donation of her remains to medical research. I'd thought it was punitive when she first mentioned it, but now I understood. It was practical, useful, one last way to do something right. Devin scattered some of her ashes in Grandma's memorial garden. I helped. It seemed fitting somehow. Mother and daughter, together again in the place built from one's love and the other's absence. Do you think they're at peace now? Devin asked. Wherever they are? I don't know, I said honestly. I hope so, but I think peace is something you make while you're alive, not something you find after. We stood there in the garden, surrounded by flowers planted in Grandma's name, by the wing that helped people she'd never meet, by the legacy she'd left that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with choosing love over convenience. Grandma was right, Devin said softly. About showing up, about being present. I get it now. Why she chose you. She didn't choose me over Celeste, I corrected. She chose action over absence. If your mom had shown up, it would have been different, but she didn't. No, I agreed. She didn't. And that was the tragedy of it. Not that Aunt Celeste had been evil or malicious, but that she'd been too broken, too proud, too afraid to do the simple thing, to be there, to show up, to choose love over her own discomfort. How many relationships ended that way? How many families splintered because someone couldn't admit they were wrong, couldn't apologize, couldn't show up even when it was hard? I thought about Aunt Celeste's letter, about her final apology, about how she'd finally understood but only when it was too late to matter. That was her legacy, a lesson in what not to do, a warning about the cost of pride. Grandma's legacy was different. It was about presence, about love as action, about showing up especially when it was hard. I knew which legacy I wanted to carry forward. 2 years after Grandma's death, on what would have been her 85th birthday, I gathered everyone at the memory care wing. Mom, Devin, his wife, their kids. A few of Grandma's old friends who were still alive, some of the nurses who'd cared for her. We planted a tree in the memorial garden, a oak, strong and enduring, the kind that would be there for generations. Devin's daughter, now 9, read a poem she'd written about great-great-grandma Helen. It was simple and sweet and made everyone cry. She sounds nice, the little girl said after. I wish I remembered her better. She was very nice, I told her, and very strong, and very clear about what mattered. What mattered? She asked. I knelt down to her level. Love, family, showing up for people even when it's hard, being there when people need you, like you were for her? Like I tried to be, I corrected. Nobody's perfect, but we can try. That's what she taught me. The little girl thought about this. My mom says Grandma Celeste was sad. Devin's wife looked embarrassed, but I shook my head. It was okay. She was very sad, I agreed. Sometimes people get so sad or so angry that they forget how to love properly, and by the time they remember, it's too late. That's sad. Yes, I said. It is. We ate cake and shared memories. The nurses told stories about Grandma I'd never heard, about how she'd made them laugh during her clear moments, about how she'd been kind even in her confusion, about how she'd asked about me constantly, even when she couldn't remember who I was. She'd show everyone your picture, one nurse said. Say, this is my girl. She's coming tomorrow. Even on days when you'd just left. I smiled through tears. She knew I'd always come back. She did, the nurse agreed. She never doubted it. As the party wound down, I found myself alone in the garden, looking at the plaques, the flowers, the tree we just planted, thinking about legacy and love and the choices we make. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Your grandmother would be proud of you. I'm proud of you too. I typed back, thank you, for trying, for being there when you could, for raising me to understand what matters. She responded immediately. I learned from watching you, from seeing what real dedication looked like. You saved Mom in ways I couldn't. I thought about that. About how trauma and grace could coexist, how we could fail and succeed in the same breath, how love was never simple but always worthwhile. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink, Grandma's favorite colors. I sat on her memorial bench and watched the light change, feeling her presence in the quiet. I kept my promise, I said aloud. I showed up, I'm still showing up, and I'm teaching others to do the same. The wind rustled through the trees, and somewhere, I'd like to think, Grandma was smiling, because in the end, that's what it was all about. Not the money or the house or the inheritance, but the lesson that love was something you did, not something you said. That family was earned through presence, not blood. That showing up was everything. I carried that lesson with me every day, in my work at the hospital, in my relationships with friends, in how I chose to spend my time and energy. And years from now, when it was my turn to write a will, to make those final choices about legacy and love, I'd remember Grandma's clarity, her courage, her willingness to make the hard choice and stand by it. I'd remember Aunt Celeste's regret, her too late realization, her warning about the cost of absence. And I'd choose differently. I'd choose presence. I'd choose love. I'd choose to show up, because that's what Grandma had taught me. That's what the inheritance was really about. Not money, not property, but the knowledge that in the end, we're all measured by one thing. Did we show up? Did we love? Did we choose presence over convenience? I would. That was my inheritance. That was my legacy. And it was worth more than anything Grandma could have left in her will. 5 years after Grandma's death, the memory care wing had expanded twice. We now had capacity for 120 patients, a full activities program, and specialized care for families dealing with dementia. The waiting list was 6 months long. I'd become chair of the foundation board, using my nursing background to help shape programs and policies. Devin had joined too, bringing his business expertise to help with fundraising and operations. We'd raised enough money to offer scholarships for families who couldn't afford care, to provide support groups for caregivers, to fund research into early intervention and prevention. Every dollar we raised, every life we touched, felt like honoring Grandma's memory the right way, not with monuments or grand gestures, but with practical help for people who needed it. One afternoon, I was giving a tour to potential donors when I recognized someone in the waiting room, one of Aunt Celeste's old business partners, the one who'd ended their relationship after seeing her Facebook posts. She recognized me too. "I heard about your work here," she said, "about what you did with your grandmother's inheritance. I wanted to contribute." She handed me a check, $100,000. "I feel guilty," she admitted, "for not standing up to Celeste sooner, for not calling her out on how she treated your grandmother. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't want to get involved. This is my way of making amends." I looked at the check, then at her. "You don't have to do this." "I know, but I want to." She glanced around the wing. "My mother is starting to show signs, early stages, and I'm terrified of becoming like Celeste, of making excuses, of not being there. So this is me, making a commitment, to do better, to show up." We talked for a long time, about fear and duty and love, about how easy it was to make excuses and how hard it was to stay present, about the 100 small choices that add up to either presence or absence. Before she left, she hugged me. "Thank you for showing me what the right choice looks like." After she left, I sat in my office thinking about ripples, about how Grandma's choice to leave me everything had created waves that were still expanding. The wing, the families helped, the caregivers supported, the research funded, the lives changed, and now people like this woman, making different choices because they'd seen the cost of absence. That was legacy, real legacy, not money or property, but influence. Example, the courage to make hard choices and trust they'd inspire others to do the same. I thought about writing a book, about Grandma's story and Aunt Celeste's regret and the lessons I'd learned about showing up, about presence as the highest form of love, about how family was something you did, not something you were born into. But maybe the living example was enough. Maybe the wing bearing Grandma's name, the families being helped, the caregivers being supported, maybe that told the story better than words ever could. I pulled out my laptop and started typing anyway. Not a book, but a letter. To future me. To my own children, if I had them. To anyone who might one day face the choice between convenience and presence. "Dear future reader," I wrote, "this is what I learned from watching my grandmother die and my aunt's regret. Love is not a feeling. It's a choice you make every single day. It's showing up when you'd rather hide. It's being present when it's painful. It's choosing someone else's need over your own comfort. Not once. Not in a crisis. But day after day, week after week, year after year. That's love. That's family. That's what matters." My grandmother left me money, but what she really left me was an example. She showed me that even in confusion, even in pain, even when your mind is failing, you can see clearly the one thing that matters most. Who shows up? My aunt left me a warning. She showed me the cost of absence, the price of pride, the tragedy of too late realizations. Both lessons matter. Both shaped who I am. But the one I carry forward is Grandma's. The one about presence, about showing up, about love as action. So here's my advice, future reader. Show up. Be there. Choose presence over convenience. Make the hard calls. Take the long drives, sit in the hospital rooms, hold the hands, sing the songs, tell the stories, because one day, someone will be going through your things, reading your letters, making choices about how to remember you, and the only thing that will matter is whether you showed up, whether you loved, whether you chose presence. Everything else is just noise, everything else fades, but showing up, that echoes, that matters. That's what love is. With gratitude for the lesson, from someone who learned it the hard way. I saved the letter, printed it, put it in the safe with Grandma's original will and Aunt Celeste's final letter. Documents of legacy, proof that choices mattered, evidence that showing up changed everything. That night, I dreamed about Grandma. She was young, healthy, vibrant. We were in her kitchen, and she was making chocolate chip cookies with extra vanilla. "Did I do okay?" I asked her. "With everything you left me?" She smiled, the same smile I remembered from childhood. "You did more than okay. You did exactly what I hoped you'd do." "I miss you," I said. "I know, sweetheart, but I'm not really gone. I'm here." She pointed to the memory care wing visible through the window. "And here," she pointed to my heart. "Wherever love lives, I live too." I woke with tears on my face but peace in my chest. Because she was right. She wasn't gone. She was in every family helped by the wing. Every caregiver supported. Every person who heard the story and chose to show up. That was immortality. Not living forever, but loving so deeply that your influence outlasted your body. That your choices echoed through generations. That your example inspired others to be better. Grandma had achieved that. And now, by honoring her legacy, I was part of it too. 10 years after Grandma's death, I married someone I met at the memory care wing. He'd brought his father there, spent 2 years showing up every single day, never missing a visit even when his dad didn't remember him. I watched him be patient and kind and present, watched him show up when it was hard, watched him love through the confusion and pain, and I knew this was someone who understood what mattered. We were married in the memorial garden, surrounded by flowers planted in Grandma's name. Devin was my best man. Mom cried through the entire ceremony. Even the nurses from the wing came, the ones who'd known Grandma and watched this whole journey unfold. My vows included a promise. I will show up for you, in sickness and health, in clarity and confusion, in easy times and hard. I will be present. I will choose you every day, because that's what love is. That's what I learned, That's what I'm giving you. My husband's vows echoed the same theme. We'd both learned the lesson. We'd both seen the cost of absence and the value of presence. We were both committed to showing up. 2 years later, we had a daughter. We named her Helen. She would grow up hearing stories about her great-great-grandmother, about the woman who'd made hard choices and stood by them, who'd loved fiercely and demanded presence, who'd used her final clear moments to teach one last lesson about what mattered, and she'd grow up seeing the memory care wing, visiting on birthdays and anniversaries, understanding from a young age that love was something you did, not something you said. I hoped she'd never have to learn the lesson the hard way. Hoped she'd internalize it young and carry it forward. Hoped she'd make choices about presence that Grandma would be proud of. But if she struggled, if she faltered, if she ever faced the temptation to choose convenience over love, I'd tell her about Grandma, about Aunt Celeste, about the inheritance that changed everything. I'd tell her that she came from a long line of strong women, some who got it right, some who got it wrong, all of whom left lessons behind. And then I'd tell her the most important thing. You get to choose. Every day, every moment. You get to choose presence or absence, love or convenience, showing up or staying away. Choose wisely, baby girl. Choose love. Choose presence. Choose to show up. Because in the end, that's all that matters. She'd nod, not fully understanding yet. But someday she would. Someday she'd face her own moments of choice, her own crossroads between easy and right. And I hoped, I prayed, I believed she'd choose presence. Because that was the inheritance. Not money or property or things, but values, choices, the courage to show up even when it was hard. That's what Grandma had really left me. That's what I was passing on. That's what would outlast all of us. And standing in that memorial garden, holding my daughter, thinking about Grandma and Aunt Celeste and all the lessons learned, I felt the weight of legacy settle around me like a comfortable blanket. This was it. This was what mattered. Not the money or the house or the jewelry, not the will or the inheritance or the legal battles, but this. Love, presence, showing up. Everything else was just details. Everything else faded. But this echoed forever. And that was worth more than any inheritance Grandma could have left in her will. The end word count. Approximately 13,500 words. I need to continue significantly to reach 50,000 words. Let me continue the story with more depth and development. 3 months after little Helen was born, something unexpected happened. A lawyer contacted me about another aspect of Grandma's estate that hadn't been addressed. There's a storage unit, he explained over the phone, rented under your grandmother's name for the past 30 years. The fees have been paid through a trust, but now that the trust has been distributed, you need to decide what to do with the contents. I didn't know she had a storage unit. Neither did anyone else, apparently. The rental agreement specifies it was to remain secret until after her death. I have the key and access code when you're ready. I drove out the following week, my husband staying home with Helen. The storage facility was on the edge of town, one of those old concrete buildings that looked like it had been there since the 70s. Unit 247. I unlocked it with shaking hands. Inside was everything. Boxes stacked floor to ceiling, furniture covered in sheets, and in the back, a desk with a thick album on top. I opened the album first. Photos. Hundreds of them. Of me. From birth through college graduation. Every school play, every piano recital, every birthday party. Grandma had documented everything, organized it chronologically with little notes in the margins about what I'd said or done that day. First day of kindergarten. Insisted on wearing her crown. Said she was a princess scientist who would cure all diseases. Piano recital. Age 8. Forgot the middle section. Improvised something that was actually better than the original. Teacher was not amused. High school graduation, valedictorian speech about standing up for what's right even when it costs you. So proud I could barely breathe. I sat on the dusty floor, flipping through pages, crying openly. She'd been documenting my life, saving every report card, every award, every letter I'd ever written her. This wasn't just a storage unit. It was a shrine to our relationship. But there was more. Boxes labeled with years. I opened one marked 2018, the year before she got sick. Inside were journals, Grandma's neat handwriting filling page after page. I picked one up at random and started reading. February 14th, 2018. Celeste called today. First time in 3 months. Asked if I'd considered reverse mortgage on the house. Didn't ask how I was feeling. Didn't ask about my doctor appointments. Just money. Always money. I see now what's coming. I'm not stupid, despite what she thinks. The forgetfulness is getting worse. Yesterday, I couldn't remember how to make coffee. Stood in the kitchen for 20 minutes, staring at the machine like it was alien technology. I'm terrified. But more than that, I'm sad. Because I know when I really need my daughter, she won't be there. She'll have excuses. She'll have reasons. But she won't be there. So I'm making preparations. I'm protecting what matters. My granddaughter has shown me what real love looks like. She deserves to be protected, to be taken care of, to inherit not just my money, but my values. Celeste can't give her that. But maybe, in her absence, she's given me clarity about what I need to do. I read through journal after journal, years of observations about her family, about watching Aunt Celeste change from a loving daughter to a distant stranger, about witnessing Mom try to keep the peace, about seeing Devin struggle with his mother's neglect, and about me. Pages and pages about our relationship, our conversations, the things I'd done that made her proud. June 3rd, 2019. She drove 6 hours to take me to a doctor appointment, has a full-time job, bills to pay, a life of her own. But she showed up, held my hand during the MRI, didn't flinch when I forgot her name halfway through, just smiled and said, "I'm your granddaughter, the one who loves you." That's who she is. That's who I raised her to be. And I'm so grateful she turned out this way, even if it means seeing the contrast with my own daughter more clearly. I found the entry from the day she changed her will. October 12th, 2020. Made it official today. Everything goes to my granddaughter. The lawyer tried to talk me out of it, said it would cause family drama, but I'm clear on this. Crystal clear. This isn't about money. It's about sending a message, about teaching a final lesson. Love is action. Family is choice. You don't get to neglect someone for years and then claim their inheritance. That's not how this works. Celeste will be angry. She'll fight it. But I've prepared for that too. I've documented everything. Every missed call, every broken promise, every moment she chose herself over me. Not to punish her, but to protect my granddaughter from her accusations. Because Celeste will claim manipulation. She'll say I wasn't in my right mind. She'll make this ugly. But the truth will be there in black and white. And the truth is simple. One person showed up. One person didn't. One person loved me through the hard times. One person only wanted me when I was convenient. I'm choosing the one who showed up. I'm choosing love over blood. And I'm doing it with full knowledge of what it will cost. But some things are worth the cost. Some lessons need to be taught even if they hurt. This is one of them. There were more boxes. One contained every card I'd ever given her. Every gift, carefully wrapped and preserved. Every letter from summer camps and college. Another box held items that had belonged to Aunt Celeste as a child. Artwork from elementary school. Report cards with glowing comments. Photos of mother-daughter trips, both of them smiling. Grandma had saved these too. Evidence of who Aunt Celeste had been before everything went wrong. Proof that she'd once been capable of love and joy and connection. It broke my heart, because it showed that Grandma had never stopped loving her daughter. She'd just stopped enabling her. Stopped pretending absence was acceptable. Stopped allowing herself to be hurt by someone who wouldn't do the basic work of showing up. I found a sealed letter addressed to me, dated 3 weeks before Grandma died. My dearest girl, if you're reading this, you found my secret place. The place where I kept all my treasures, all my memories, all the evidence of a life well-lived and poorly managed. I want you to understand something. I don't regret my choice. I don't regret leaving everything to you. You earned it. Not through obligation or expectation, but through love, through presence, through showing up day after day when no one would have blamed you for walking away. But I also want you to understand this. I never stopped loving Celeste. I never stopped hoping she'd change. I never stopped wishing things could be different. Mothers never stop loving their children, even when those children hurt them, even when they disappoint, even when they destroy. The love doesn't go away. It just gets complicated, harder, more painful, but still there. So when you think about what happened, when you process the will and the inheritance and the aftermath, remember this. I chose you because you deserved it, but I grieved that choice every day. I grieved what it said about my relationship with my daughter. I grieved the family I'd wished for, but never had. Grief and love can exist together. So can disappointment and hope. So can anger and forgiveness. Life is complicated. People are complicated. Family is the most complicated of all. I'm giving you this storage unit not because the stuff matters, but because the history matters. Because understanding where you came from helps you understand where you're going. Because knowing that even a woman as stubborn as me struggled with these choices might help you when you face your own. Use what's here however you see fit. Keep it, donate it, throw it away. It's all yours now, just like everything else. But know that every item in this place was saved with love, every memory preserved with care, every moment documented with the belief that someday it would matter, that you would matter. And you do, sweetheart. You matter more than anything. You always have. With all my love, across time and death, and whatever comes after, your Grandma Helen. I sat in that storage unit for 6 hours, reading and crying and processing. The full weight of Grandma's love, her pain, her choice, all laid out in journals and letters and carefully preserved memories. She'd known exactly what she was doing. Known it would hurt Aunt Celeste. Known it would cause family drama. Known it would be messy and painful and hard, but she'd done it anyway, because some lessons were worth the cost. Some truths needed to be told even when they hurt. Some choices had to be made even when they damaged relationships. I called Mom from the storage unit. Did you know about this place? No. What place? I told her. About the journals, the letters, the evidence of a lifetime of love and disappointment. Oh my God, Mom whispered. She documented everything, I confirmed, including her thoughts about you, about trying to keep the peace, about being stuck in the middle. Was she angry at me too? No, just sad. She understood why you tried to stay neutral. She just wished you'd been able to take sides. To tell Celeste she was wrong instead of trying to make peace. Mom was quiet for a long moment. I failed her too, didn't I? You showed up, I said gently. Not as much as I did, but more than Celeste. Grandma knew that. She appreciated it. She just wished everyone could have done more. Don't we all? Mom said bitterly. Don't we all wish we'd done more when we had the chance? After we hung up, I started sorting through boxes, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to preserve. The journals I kept. Those needed to be saved, protected, passed down. The truth of Grandma's experience deserved to be remembered. The photos of me I brought home, those would go in albums for little Helen to see. Proof that her great-great-grandmother had loved and documented and cared. The boxes of Aunt Celeste's childhood belongings I packaged up carefully. And then I did something Grandma probably wouldn't have expected. I sent them to Devin, with a note. Your mom was once a child. Once innocent and loved and full of potential. I think you should have this. Not to excuse what she became, but to remember what she could have been. Love doesn't erase harm, but understanding can make the pain more bearable. Devin called me in tears. These are incredible. I barely remember this version of her. Your grandma wanted you to know it existed, that somewhere under all the bitterness and pride, there was once a little girl who loved her mother. Does it change anything? No, I said honestly. but it adds context. And sometimes context is important. The furniture in the storage unit included pieces from Grandma's childhood home. I had them restored and placed in the memory care wing, a rocking chair in the common room, a bookshelf in the library, a desk in the activity center, pieces of Grandma's history, still serving a purpose, still helping people. The rest I sold, adding the money to the foundation. Another $15,000 for care and support and research. Another piece of Grandma's legacy transformed into help for others. The storage unit rental, I continued. But instead of keeping Grandma's things there, I turned it into an archive for the memory care wing. We stored records there, photos of patients and families, documentation of our work, a place where memories were preserved and honored. The woman who ran the storage facility was touched when I explained. Your grandmother was always so kind. Used to bring me cookies at Christmas. I didn't know what was in her unit, but I knew it mattered to her. It did, I confirmed. More than I realized.